Hello everyone. So I have got another little chat. Today we are talking all things creativity, and I have Melanie Graham. She is from she's got her own business called Creative Content Galway, and we met virtually. We haven't met in person yet, but via the business coach Talia Zamora, who's been a guest interview on my channel and various social media bits, and also I've done some guest talks for her. So it's sort of quite nice that you, Melanie, you found me through me doing a guest in her group. So it's just interesting to see like how you meet people, whether it's virtually or online. So Melanie, you're over in the lovely Ireland, so in Galway, I'm presuming, because of creative
Just outside of Galway, yeah, a little tiny village called Shrule.
Yeah, and so just sort of having a look at your bio that I've got here. So you're a creative artist, and tell us a bit more about that in a little while. And you've been doing that for 15 years. You've also experienced cancer, which had a massive impact on how you do design and art, and so it led you to going digital. So you can tell us a little bit more about that in a moment. And
Yeah.
also just that we sort of were discussing different programs. We had a bit of a one-to-one before Christmas and having a little chat, and you do use Canva, but you also use a program called Procreate, and you're actually going to be doing a demo for us, which will be in a separate video, so look out for that. And you can see the different things. Sorry?
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so it's sort of it's good to sort of know all the different tools out there. So I love Canva, but I don't use just Canva. There are other tools that I use, and I hadn't heard of Procreate before, or at least not that had sunk into my brain. So it's really going to be exciting for me to see it demoed later on, which will come out in a future video. But first of all, I just wanted to allow people to get to know you in the group and on my YouTube channel, about who you are, as an artist, and your kind of backstory. It's very interesting. Tell us a little bit about kind of how things have changed for you over the years, and who you are.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really thrilled to be here. Um, so I've always been into art, like in school and everything, I was really into art. But I kind of didn't for a long time, starting a family, young children and all of that. I didn't do much art for several years. And then I was working as a kindergarten teacher in UAE, which is another thing we have in common.
Oh yes, I'd forgotten about that, because I grew up in Dubai, but you were in a different emirate, weren't you?
I was in LA.
Elaine, yeah.
So we were living there. So of course I had plenty of space to do my art. And one spring break, I thought it would really make me happy to paint again. I'm going to get some canvases and some paint and paint this spring break. That was my goal for that spring break. So I did. But when I sat there in front of the blank canvas, I was intimidated by it. I thought, I bought this canvas and what am I going to paint? And it felt like pressure. And that was the opposite of what I wanted. I wanted a nice hobby that could help me relax, not stress me out. So what I ended up doing was I had some old canvases, art that I had bought really cheaply and then decided I didn't like. So it was just in the back of my closet, pretty much wasted. But that's how I got over that fear of that blank canvas. I got out those canvases that I just intended to give away or throw away anyway, and thought it doesn't matter if I ruin these, right? I can just have fun, and that took the pressure off.
So you just painted over the top of these existing canvases then?
Right.
So you didn't have a blank canvas, that blank piece of paper, the fear. It can be a good thing, and it can be, as you said, intimidating.
It just turned it from pressure into like, okay, I'm repurposing these things that have no value to me, and maybe I'll make them better. Or if I don't, it's okay, because I already decided they have no value to me anyway.
Yeah.
So I did, and I had an idea in my head of what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something where the paint is really active and flowing and moving on the canvas. And I went through those three. There was three of those canvases, and then the blank ones. And by the end of that period, I'd gotten exactly what I was going for. And after that, I just went out and bought gallons and gallons of paint. I would buy like 10 gallons of paint at a time in a wide range of colors and just fling. People now call it acrylic pour, which sounds very proper, but I just flung paint, to be honest. There was paint everywhere. I would put down a tarp and the room and me and the canvas as well would all be covered in paint from head to toe. And it was beautiful. Like I just played and it was so much fun. And I did that every free moment, from then on for years and years and years. And I also dabbled in watercolors and inks and charcoal. And I like to say my artistic style varies from smack it with a hammer and see what happens all the way to obsessive, precise, controlled art, and everything in between. So I've tried all different kinds of things and love them all, to be honest. But I called it fluid art. The acrylic pour art was definitely my favorite. But then once we moved to Ireland and I got diagnosed with bone cancer, it was in my chest, had surgery, went through 8 months of chemo, got the all clear. But when you pour the paint onto the canvases, they get quite heavy and you have to manipulate them around a lot. And so I wasn't able to do that anymore. And that's what led me to digital art. But that was just such a blessing in disguise because I love it so much. It's everything all in one. And you don't even have the pressure of wasting canvases or, it's all like you can start a new canvas and then delete it and start a new canvas and delete it forever. There's no pressure like that at all. It's just all fun.
So you started looking at sort of digital art, out of necessity. You still wanted to create and be an artist, and found another forum. There are lots of other artists who've gone out and dabbled with digital art as a medium. How did you dabble with different programs before you then settled on Procreate? Or did you just get lucky and just stumbled on it and went, oh, I'll just use that and it's fine?
No. It was a journey. I didn't actually find Procreate until just this past May.
Oh, so quite new, relatively.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I love it so much that I'm on it, honestly, hours and hours. It doesn't have a clock that times your time on there, but I've put in so many hours because I just love it. But anyway, back to what I went through with the digital art. I first started on the computer. I think I told you about this before, a program called paint.Net.
Okay, yep.
And it's kind of like a free version of Adobe, like Photoshop or Illustrator, one of the big things.
Yeah.
And there's a whole community around it. It's really lovely. It starts off when you first download it. It's really basic. So you look in there and you think, geez, this must be for little kids or something because there's nothing in there, right?
Right.
But you kind of take each step. So as you learn something, you'll then go to the community and download a plugin, which allows you whatever you're trying to do next. I didn't even know how to create layers at that time, right? So I was just painting on top and then something would get messed up and I'd try and fix it and it'd ruin the whole thing. But once I found layers, the whole world opened up. Yeah. So anyway, with paint.net, I still actually use it. It's a lovely program and it's a lovely community. There's a forum. You can ask questions. Someone's always there to answer questions. And again, there's thousands and thousands of plugins. So pretty much.
And would you say it's quite a good tool because of that process of those building blocks of the tools? Would you say that's quite a good tool, particularly for someone who's maybe not as tech savvy or is a bit scared with sort of new programs and stuff, that it's very kind of the building blocks of it makes it, you focus on one kind of skill set at a time?
Yes, exactly right. For example, when I opened up, I have Photoshop, Illustrator, the whole Adobe suite I have. And I tried also, what's the other big one? I'm sorry, I can't remember. But I tried it as well. And when I open them up, they're so elaborate inside. I find them intimidating.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Affinity Designer is another one that is a good alternative to the Adobe sort of suite, you know, particularly mixed between Illustrator and Photoshop. So I think they got one which is slightly more geared up for photo editing, and one which is kind of more like Illustrator, but with some photo editing bits in there as well. And it's more of a one-off fee rather than the kind of subscription model that Adobe has. So it's a lot cheaper, and it's still, you know, very professional. But it's up to it's as much as anything, it's about that familiarity, isn't it, with a tool? You know, you know, there's lots of programs that I can figure out, because once you know that there's the possibility of doing something, you're like, well, maybe I can do it in this program, and it's just a case of hunting it. It's knowing the ability to do something, like knowing that there is the possibility of layers means, oh, well, does this program have layers and things like that? But, you know, stick me on you know, Excel, and, you know, I can use it, but I couldn't do a complicated spreadsheet with all formulas and stuff. I can kind of do the basic stuff. So we all have our, you know, our sweet spot in terms of, you know, skills. But it's remembering that whatever you're learning, that you started from the kind of the no knowledge. You know, you weren't born with this ability to like create amazing stuff on iPads, or how to sort of balance your spreadsheets and things like that, or whatever it is that your zone of genius is. You've learned that over years. So even you know, when people are sort of starting out with Canva, it's like you know, it's okay, you're not necessarily a trained designer. So yes, you can kind of learn and pick an eye, you know, develop an eye for these things and work out what you feel works for you and your brand. But, you know, it takes time to get to know that program, whatever it is.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the whole key, is just being determined and having the desire to learn new things and to try new things. If you have that, you can do anything, right? There's nothing you can't do if you want to. There's so many. YouTube is great for that too. Even on Procreate now, I love it so much. There's still a million things I haven't learned how to do yet on Procreate. So if I run into something on there that I don't know how to do yet, I pop on YouTube and search for it, and there's always a tutorial for it.
Absolutely, yeah. Same for me, particularly with the Adobe software. That I think I've barely scratched the surface, because they, you know, all these tools bring in new functionalities. You're like, you know, until you've used it in kind of in your design or whatever you're creating, you're not necessarily be familiar with it. And even with like Canva, yes, I'm sort of billing myself as an expert, but like there's lots of things that I'm not so familiar with, or, you know, sort of some of the features where I'm like, oh, you know, I've not had you know, it's a bit quirky, or I'm not sure about. So, you know, it's it's just sort of knowing a bit more than someone else.
Well, you know, I'd say just about 2 months ago, I stumbled into the whole area where you can add shadows, which I hadn't found before in Canva. And I was like, oh, okay, because I was building stuff in Canva and then taking it over to Spark or Procreate to add my shadows. And there it was, right in there, all built in and lovely. I just hadn't found it before. So that's another thing too.
Shadows is quite a new feature. That's on
the time to poke around and find everything in every different place. That's another thing.
Yeah, that's the shadows on the text though, isn't it? I'm waiting for them to bring in shadows on objects. That's always been a downside for me of Canva, that it doesn't, you can't just add a nice soft drop shadow. You can only do, you can kind of cheat it. There are ways of adding it, but it's got a kind of harsh edge to it. But yeah, no, I do like the drop shadow for text. Anyway, so how did you go from the paint tool that sounds like it's got lots of great features and you still use today? How did you go from that to then discovering Procreate? Or, you know, did you dabble in any other programs before you then kind of settled on Procreate?
So what I started to want was more realistic kind of paintbrushes, a way to paint like oils or watercolors in a more realistic way. I would have to say that unless I just haven't found the right plugins yet, that is one place where paint.Net falls down. Their brushes aren't, you don't get the blending and all that kind of fun stuff, the spread of the watercolor and stuff like that. So that's what led me to exploring other apps.
Yeah.
And I think I tried, and I don't know what companies make these apps, but I definitely tried Sketches. I don't know if you've heard of that. Let me just open up I tried Sketches. I tried Sketchbook is another really good one. Have you heard of that?
No.
That's Autodesk.
Okay.
Autodesk Sketchbook, and then they have something called Sketchbook Motion, which is really
Okay.
fun. So you can kind of bring your little things to life on there. That's really good.
Oh.
I definitely would recommend playing around with those two, Sketchbook
Well, I'll
and
make sure to grab all the links for those additional ones from you, sort of the tools that we've talked about. So I'll make sure to link them in the description.
that'd be great. Yeah, and Adobe also has Adobe Draw and Adobe Sketch. So I
Yes.
definitely played with those as well. And they do have lovely brushes, and you
Yeah.
do get fun, really artistic, realistic kind of
Yeah,
features.
my son used the Adobe Paint tools on my iPad, and he uses it more than I do. I've kind of dabbled with it, but I've not kind of taken to it. I think because I'm on the computer so much, it's sort of I haven't kind of got round to it. So he did some drawing over the Christmas period or just before Christmas, and he did a really lovely Christmas tree. So I was like, oh, so I turned it into our Christmas card and sent it
Oh,
out.
that's so
So just
nice.
it out. So that was really nice.
Really good. It's so important to promote that in children as well, because that's actually a point where people can um, end up with a limiting belief, which makes them think that they're not creative or that something they create wouldn't have value, would be from childhood usually. So either they've compared their own creation to somebody else's and thought it wasn't as good, or a teacher's comment, or anything can actually cause that. And then, because I run into all the time people who say I'm just not creative, but actually everyone
Yeah,
is
it frustrates me when I
creative.
hear that as well, because I think people when they say that, they tend to believe that being creative is only limited to almost like painting, drawing, that kind of thing. But
Right.
creativity comes in many different forms. You've got, creativity in cooking. You can be a real artist or have a real flair for that, or learn to do it and develop that skill set. You've got obviously music, singing. And even in the art form, there's so many different ways of doing it. There's things like doing like mandala painting on
Mm-hmm.
rocks.
Lovely.
There's resin art where you're just sort of pouring resin and kind of capturing objects and
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
It's
um,
almost endless, really.
yeah, and you talked about the acrylic pour art, and so you don't have to necessarily be a traditionally good or competent drawer, with a pencil. It's just about having an idea and putting it to action. It's playing, isn't it?
It is.
Really.
It is.
It's about having fun. It's certainly something that I've been doing a little bit more of last year, and want to do more of this year, is setting aside more time to do stuff off the computer. So doing a bit more of painting and stuff. I wouldn't call myself an artist, interesting enough. We have all these labels.
Yeah,
I can do some illustration, but I wouldn't call myself an illustrator. So it's interesting to sort of, but having said that, it's fine to sort of play. Just because I'm not going to sell my painting or art,
exactly.
there's no reason why we can't all enjoy some sort of outlet that is just about play and fun, whether it's on your own or with the family. So yeah.
Exactly. That's one of my big things is, well, there's two that I'm really passionate about. One is that creativity and artistic talent are completely separate things, right? Everyone is born creative and immensely creative, and it sometimes gets lost. Artistic talent can be taught or learned.
Well,
That's the
yeah,
difference.
because you can, if you think about, sort of in the olden days, sort of having, that painting was very almost like photographic, because they didn't have photographic equipment, they didn't have cameras, so they wanted the style, and you have fashions of style and within art, etc. And so it was very much about trying to capture that object or person as closely as possible. And yes, there is some creativity in that, but you could learn to do that, you know, almost sort of a bit more than like a paint by numbers thing, but you could learn to be quite good at it. But doing something like Picasso and sort of some of the other more, you know, contemporary artists, and, you know, where you kind of go more abstract or experimental, it's about having those ideas, and you can nurture that, definitely.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing was something you brought up, the value of something that you might create. If you create, like you, I mean, you can sing, you can dance, all kinds of ways you could be creative that you wouldn't end up with an end product. But if you do express yourself creatively and end up with an end product, don't mistake material value for its actual value. Material value of the end product, what something would pay for it, is not important at all. The actual value of it is your self-expression, your freedom and joy in the creative process. That's its value.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that a lot, particularly with sort of more crafting businesses, that, you know, people who were like knitting, crocheting stuff, you know, making kind of smaller objects that are, you know, like particularly for Christmas and stuff, and you can get quite bogged down with the whole, well, the materials cost that, and then don't really factor in all the hours and time and talent of producing that object. So that's an area where people are very guilty of undercharging, and also the general marketplace of that, you know, it's so easy to buy something that's been mass produced and just off the shelf in a high street store or online. It's
Right.
more the case maybe, but not realizing, you know, the value of the local artists. I mean, interestingly enough, the necklace that I'm wearing, I sort of posted some selfies of that earlier today, because it's a friend of mine. She's been playing with and experimenting with glass. So she went on some courses and workshops, and then has experimented and thought she'd like to produce some jewelry pieces as part of it. So I've got, you know, well, this one's not a commission piece, but this one I sort of really loved. And so it's nice, it's one of a kind, you know, and so that's her expression of play and creativity, and I'm wearing that, so it's nice.
It's very nice. I encourage everyone to find their creative outlet. That's another thing. It's about what you love, what gets you sparked up. It could be anything. So find what you love to do and just play. Spend a couple of hours a week just having fun.
Yeah, and it's a great way to unwind and feed the soul, isn't it?
Yes.
So in terms of the digital art that you've been doing, has that been for sort of last 4 years? Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So have you got any sort of general tips for people wanting to sort of try other apps than Canva, you know, going into the more drawing kind of aspect of digital art? Is there anything, any advice, you know, like what kind of equipment is useful to have? Can you do it just on a laptop, or do you have to have an iPad type thing where you've got a, you know, stylus and or using a finger and things like that to draw on?
Yes. Well, I started off just the laptop. I didn't have an iPad. And that works. That's fine. You know, you can definitely do anything you would want to do on there. Like I said, I took a journey though, which led me to Procreate, and I have to say it wins hands down. It's my favorite. And you know, when you open it up, it looks very simple and plain, and you're thinking, you know, did I just buy another kind of notes doodle pad? Is that what I've just bought? You know, because it does. That's the downside, is it does cost. I think it costs €10, which honestly I now consider the best €10 I ever spent.
So is that a one-off charge or a monthly?
Yeah.
10 euros. That's like not nothing these days when it comes
Right.
to programs.
Exactly. But I always just try to find free versions of everything, you know?
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a cheapskate. But I mean, if you could get it for free, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
But honestly, it's so well worth €10. It's so good.
Good value for money. That's
Good value for money, yes. So much entertainment, and also it's been so helpful to my business. So what it does better than the others, like some are very they do one thing better than the other, like the design kind of side, the arranging things, getting it all centered in, your designs, making it perfect and precise. They
Yeah.
do better than, like I said, the more artistic, realistic kind of brushes that you can really
Yeah.
get artsy with and paint and draw. That's the beauty of Procreate. It kind of combines all of that into one.
Mm.
It's got features that allow you to design and help you get it all perfect and squared up and beautiful. But it also has all the brushes. It
Mm.
has text options. It has a lovely community too that you can go and get free brushes and
But you
lots.
also still use Canva as well.
I use Canva a lot. Yeah, my
Yeah.
big three would be Canva, possibly more for business, for the kind of graphic design sort of things. Canva, Procreate, and a program called Adobe Spark are my big
Yeah.
three. I'm back and forth between all of those
Yeah.
continually.
Yeah. And it's totally okay. If you're sort of new to Canva and you think, oh well, what I've got to use another program. Well, you don't have to, but you know, it's very rare to find a program that does everything.
Exactly.
And it's about that familiarity with it, as I mentioned before. So yeah, so it's okay if you need a few different programs to get the job done.
So we'll just get right into it. Here is the Procreate app. And this is inside. What you see when you click on it inside is just kind of an area where all your designs live. And it's I think there's unlimited storage. It's huge. And you can stack things up. So like each client will have a stack, or different projects can have a stack, however you like to organize it yourself. I'll just open up a stack and show you. So that's kind of all the different things I had going on for one of the logos I did. Today, I want to do a little cupcake thing for you. So first I'll show you, you can start off with any different kind of canvas you want to. I do a lot for Instagram, so I generally kind of would do square or just screen size. You can also start off with a photo, so you can grab a photo straight away from your gallery and start working on it. But today we'll just do a square, blank square. So once you're inside here, I'll show you the color palettes. It's a really nice feature. I have a cupcake color palette right here. And then I have like separate branding color palettes for clients. And then you can also download for free lots of color palettes. These are all Copic marker color palettes. The possibilities are endless. There is a free community called Procreate Folio, and there's always tons of free resources in there. There's color palettes and brushes and fonts and elements all for free, and you can go in there if you have any questions. The people are really nice. They'll answer questions for you. So let's start off on our cupcake, and that I think is the base for the base color for the cupcake liner. So one of the first things I'll show you is a really nice feature for people like me, because I'm kind of wobbly. So, I've got stars. My stars. So usually I do inking pens mainly for drawing. Oh, but there's the brushes. You can see all the brushes. And a lot of these I've downloaded for free from Folio. It comes with a pretty good selection straight away, but you can just go in there and get all kinds of brushes. Whatever project you happen to be working on, you can just grab a brush for it. Like one time I was doing something I wanted to look like fabric. A logo I wanted to look like fabric. And I thought, I wonder if I can just grab a fabric brush. And definitely there was a fabric brush, which is pretty amazing. Fabrics, there it is. So I wanted a fabric. I think I went with linen for my logo. Just cool for adding textures and stuff. But back to our cupcake. So for drawing, I usually use inking. And so now I'll show you the feature that's really cool for wobbly people like me. So see, as you draw, even if you're trying to be careful, your lines are kind of wobbly. So this is just really nice. And color fill, oops, I just missed a tiny bit there. Let's just fill that in so it doesn't make a problem for us later. For color fill, you just drag and drop from the circle. And then I want to add some stripes to my liner. So I want to show you now, go darker stripes. So here is just this open layer. When you're on a layer, it's blue if it's selected, right? So I'll switch to a texture brush. These little stripies here. And you'll see if I just start to draw, just as like it is now, it's really hard to, like, you can't possibly keep it within the little cupcake liner, and it's annoying, and you're trying to erase and get it just perfect, and you can't. But another handy feature with Procreate is you just switch on this clipping mask, and then no matter where you draw on the screen, it will only show up. Why is it not showing it? Maybe I went back to my liner color. Okay, it'll only show up within the shape. So when you switch on your clipping mask, no matter where you draw on the screen, it only shows up on your shape. All right, so I'm happy with that cupcake liner. I'm just gonna pinch the two to merge them. You can keep them separate. It gives you a lot of layers. It's not unlimited, but it's like 20 or 25 layers. But once I'm happy with something, I generally just go ahead and merge. Up to the point where you go back out to the gallery, you can undo forever, clear at the beginning. But once you go to the gallery, the drawing that you've just done will be saved as it is. So at that point, you wouldn't be able to undo anything anymore. So let's add another layer, and we'll switch to our little cupcake itself. Back to inking brush. And we'll just draw a little cupcake shape. And fill it in. I'm pretty happy with that. This is over here's a little bit wonky. Now I'll show you a cool thing with the, so like when you're drawing it straightens up your lines. It also does that with the eraser. So you can just erase like that, or you can make a shape and hold, and then it gives you a nice clean line. So you're erasing, it has an erasing help feature as well to keep things nice and tidy. Take quite a bit of that off, I think. Okay. Cool. Now I want to add some a little bit darker. Actually, I don't think that's quite dark enough. So let's go to a different view. Darken that up just a bit more. So as you can see, when you're working with colors, you can see different views of the colors. So there's the palettes area. You can put in hex codes to get an exact code, which is great for branding, obviously, and stuff. Complementary colors, classic view, and disc view. So I'll go back to palettes. Got my darker color. I want a little bit of texture, so I'm going to switch to, I think it's Sweet Party. Yep, I'll get a nice little sugar texture. And I want to switch my create a new layer, put my clipping mask on so I don't have to be careful with it, and just give it some texture. That's a bit. There we go. That's nice. Just a nice little bit of cakey looking texture. Okay. So I'm happy with the cupcake bit, so I'll merge those and then make a new layer for icing. That's the base icing color. Switch back to inking. Okay, and I think we'll start off with a little curlicue. Alrighty, fill that in. And now what I want to show you is how you can manipulate things after you've drawn them. It's pretty cool. There's 4 different things you can do. So there's free form, just kind of all around the place. There's uniform, which is pretty much just smaller and larger as it is. There's distort, which does some cool stuff. And warp, which allows you to just kind of push and pull anything any way you want. But I was pretty happy with that originally. Needs a little bit of tidying up, but it's not too bad. So we will just fill in a bit with the pen where I got a little floppy there. And erase a bit of the long bits. Now again, if I want this, if I feel like my lines aren't smooth enough, I can hold and get a nice smooth line. Looking pretty good. And again, anything you're doing, kind of hand drawing, I mean, you can make digital art obviously look absolutely perfect if you want to. But anything you're doing, hand drawing, you know, little oddities, let's say, give a character. So I generally don't get too fussy about my little hand drawings. I'm going to take off a bit off the curly Q thing. And I think we're about done with this. Oops. Give that a smooth line if I can. Oops. Alrighty. Looking good. Add a little bit more here at the bottom. Whoopsie daisy. Back to pen. Just fill that up a bit. Okay. Happy with that. Let's add some shadows. So I'm going to add another layer. And get a bit darker color for shadows. And for shadows, I usually like to do an airbrush brush, a soft brush. And I'm picturing my light source is kind of top right. So put shadows kind of down along this side and underneath. Oops, now I didn't switch on my clipping mask and it got messy. Clipping mask on, do some shadows under the curlicue, along here, along here, under here, under here, under here. Okay, and then highlights, highlight color on top. Top of this one, top of this one. Okay, now the shadow looks kind of harsh, or the highlights and shadows are kind of sharp. So we have them in a separate layer. We can just blur it a bit as a layer to just kind of soften them up. That's nice. So I'm happy with the icing now how it is. So I'll merge those. And you can rename the layers. Call that icing. Call that cake. Call that liner. All right, and then I'd like to add some sprinkles. So we'll add another layer for sprinkles. And I think I will go with a brighter color. Grab that pink. Find my sprinkles. I think they are the sweet party set. Yep, there's my sprinkles. Check my size. Put on my clipping mask so that the sprinkles stay on the icing. Oh, those are a bit small. I'll make them a bit bigger. Oh yeah, lovely. So there's my little cupcake. Now I can save this as is. Your saving options are Procreate, PSD, PDF, JPEG, PNG, and TIFF. So if I saved it as a TIFF right now, I would save all my layers as they are. I can remove the background and save it without a background, so any background you put it on would show through. I like to keep a complete version of whatever I've just made, and I also like to keep a layered version. So what I usually do is bring them all together and then copy that and then undo them and then add oops, and then add my complete one back in. So now within my layers I have a complete one, and then I also have one with all its separate layers in case I want to go back and change anything later. But to be handy, then I have a complete one that I can just take out and use in other things. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is text. You have the ability to add text to your designs inside Procreate. Add text. So once you have the words in that you want, then you highlight it, and that opens up a whole text panel. And there are quite a lot of fonts that come with it, but you can get more fonts free from Folio, or you can buy fonts from places like Creative Market. And generally, if you buy fonts, usually there will be the option to just upload them directly to Procreate, which is nice. So you don't have to go searching for them on your computer. Let's go with that one. And inside here you have quite a bit of control over size. Move it up so you can see. the spacing of the letters, how far apart they are. And if you have it into layers, oh, my text is below my cupcake. Let's move our text up. Highlight it again. You can control how far apart they are if you have it into rows. So we will make that a little bit smaller. So it's back on 1. Yes, that's nice. And then once you're out of here, you do still have control. You can select it and still change the size. Freeform, distort, warp, all that stuff that you can normally do when something is selected. And then I didn't show you the snapping guides. So if the snapping guides are off, you move it around kind of smoothly and freely. If they're on, they help you like center things. So the yellow line means you've got it centered in the middle there. And then the last thing is shadows. You can do pretty cool shadows in Procreate. So I'll just duplicate the text layer. I'll make that one black. And then you can see the layer beneath is black. So then you can scoot it over a little bit, the black layer, so it shows. And then blur that a little bit. Just pretty good. So there is our text. And again, then you can save that with a background, without a background. You can change the color of the background, obviously, and decorate it any way you like. But that's about it for our cupcake demo inside Procreate. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you around the lovely Canva crew.
So thank you so much, Melanie. I hope everyone who's watched this found it interesting. We have kind of gone over time. And I always say, oh yeah, finish up there. But I get very into like hearing about it and chatting. So it's the way.
It's been lovely. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.